Hi, my name's May. I love yarn. I love to knit and crochet. Those are my hobbies, and I also happen to have been born visually impaired, legally blind, and I happen to think that I knit and crochet by feel and that anybody who's visually impaired can as well. So it's a very tactile art and craft. You use your hands to manipulate the yarn and the needles or the hook. So in my videos, I try to use my words, describe what I'm doing so that other people who are visually impaired can follow along. So of course, these videos are for everybody. So if you're sighted, you are of course welcome here. But just know if you hear me describing things a lot, it's because I want to make sure that people who are visually impaired are following. Okay, so I am participating in Sock Week this week, the week of July 20th through July 27th. That's something that Nitty Natty's doing over on her channel, where you need to knit or crochet one sock in that 8-day period in fingering weight yarn. So now, as I've talked about previously during Sock Week, I traditionally, my go-to sock yarn is Stroll. It's by Knit Picks and We Crochet. It's a fingering weight yarn. It's wonderful. It's 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. I love it. But for some reason, I thought, well, I'm taking on the challenge of Sock Week, I should work with a brand new yarn that is totally new to me. So I thought, let's work with the Hawthorne fingering. Here's the tag. And the color Klamath Falls Tonal is a bunch of different shades of blues. Really beautiful. So this is my first sock completed in the Klamath Falls Tonal. And this is my second sock, right? So it's on the needles still, and something that I've talked about for most people why they don't knit socks or why they give up on knitting socks is this part right here where you work the heel. This is where people get stuck, and I get it. That's challenging, right? Turning the heel is challenging, whether you're working top down or toe up, making the heel and putting this turn for the ankle, right? This is my ankle. Putting that turn for your sock to make it go around your ankle is the challenging part. So I happen to work my socks toe up. That works for me best. But once I made that decision to work with this Hawthorne fingering that I've never worked with before, I soon realized that yes, it's a fingering weight yarn, but it is thicker than Stroll. And so that meant during Sock Week, I had to stop and pause and rewrite my pattern. It's a pattern that I have in my head, so it's not a big deal, but I did have to recalculate my heel, and that was the hardest part. I really had to stop and do the math because I normally do 64 stitches all the way around my sock, right? So normally when I work with Stroll, I would have 32 stitches on the front needle. We're going to call the top needle, the one that's going to go across the top of our foot. We're going to call that needle 1. And then the needle that goes across the bottom of our foot on the sole, right? We're going to call that needle 2. So normally when I have been working my socks with Stroll, I have 32 stitches on the front needle and 32 on the back for a total of 64. Well, what I found out, I did that with the Hawthorne fingering, and it was way, way, way too big. And because this is the ribbing, it's a multiple of 4 stitches. I needed to take out 4 stitches on the front needle and 4 stitches on the back needle. That meant I needed to decrease by 8. So that's what I did. I did 56 stitches, right? On the sock that I have complete, we have 56 stitches, 28 stitches on the front needle on needle 1 and 28 stitches on needle 2. Now for most people, it is common, we're looking at my completed sock, the part on the bottom, on the sole where we walk, we don't want, whatever our pattern is going to be on the front of our sock, whether it's ribbing or cables or whatever, most people don't want to walk on that, right? They want a nice flat fabric to walk on. So most people will do the ribbing or whatever on the front, on the top, but across the sole where they're walking, they maintain it in stockinette. So that's what we're looking at here, the bottom of it. This is the stockinette fabric. This is called stockinette. If you look on the inside of it, I'll give you a little peek. This is on the inside. This is what the stockinette looks like on the inside. That's just called reverse stockinette. And so the side that you have out for people to see on your knitting project and your crochet project, that's called the right side. And then the side that's going to go on the inside, that's not meant to be seen, is called the wrong side. Now, it's not technically wrong to have reverse stockinette on the outside of your project. It just depends on what that pattern calls for. But in this particular pattern, we are having the stockinette on the outside, reverse stockinette on the inside. Okay, now knitting in the round and knitting flat are different. I'm not going to do a deep dive in this video on the differences to educate people. So if you're not at all familiar with knitting, you might be a little bit lost and confused about the differences in knitting in the round versus knitting flat. But basically, with this sock, we're creating a tube. So we are, in fact, knitting in the round, which means we start here, needle 1 at the first stitch, and we're going to knit all the way across it, which I've already done. And then we're going to flip the whole project because we've got 2 needles, and we're going to start on the second needle, and we're going to work across that. And that's knitting in the round, and that would complete 1 round. And then you would flip your project over, and the next round would start on the very same stitch that the previous round it started on. But when you knit flat, you would just knit across needle 1, and then you would turn the work, and you would go back so that your last stitch becomes the first stitch that you work. So we're going to do both in this video. We're going to knit in the round and we're going to knit flat. But the thing that might get confusing if you're not familiar with knitting is that to create stockinette fabric, if you're knitting in the round, you knit every single round. But when you knit flat, you knit it, and then when you go to turn it back, you purl it, and it will create the exact same fabric. I know that's super, super confusing. When you first start knitting, you're like, why is it different? But as you start knitting, it makes sense. So for me, I talked about how the hardest part of knitting socks is the heel. And so there's options. There's a lot of options on how to do heels in socks. I am not good at short rows, right? I've done wrap and turn short rows. I can do the first half of them great. It's the second half where you have to go back and you have to pick up the wrap, and then you got to double wrap it, and then you got to pick up both wraps. I'm terrible at that. I can't find those wraps by feel. I usually mess it up 2 or 3 times, have to rip out the sock, start it all over again. So I try to avoid wrap and turn unless it's a self-striping yarn, and then I'll do it. And that's why I didn't choose the Premier Fruit sock yarn, because that is a self-striping yarn, and I will have to do short rows on that, and I didn't want to take that on right now. So a lot of times people will create a gusset, and then they'll do like a heel flap, and then you have to pick up and knit your stitches on the side. And if you watch my video on the Dottie ruffle dress talking about picking up and knitting the stitches on the sleeves, that was really challenging for me to do on a DK weight yarn. Well, this as a fingering yarn is even smaller. So I don't want to pick up and knit either. So you don't have a lot of other choices left for heels if you don't want to do short rows and you don't want to pick up and knit. But I do have a heel method that I use. I don't see a lot of other people using it. I don't know why. I don't see it on YouTube very much. I really don't know if I've seen it at all, but it's my personal preference. So I thought we'd do it here. Now, what you need to know how to do, though, is you are working on a sock. So you're going to need to know how to knit in the round. You're going to need to know how to knit flat. You're going to need to know how to knit. You're going to need to know how to purl. You're going to need to know how to work an increase where you can work any increase that you want. I am going to knit one through the front and the back because that's my favorite increase. But if you want to do a make one right or a make one left or a lifted increase, you do you, okay? I'm not here to tell you what the best method is for working increases in your heels. I'm just telling you what I am going to use in this video. And then what we also have to do is you have to know how to do slip, slip, knit, and you have to know how to purl two together to use this method. So what we are going to do is to make the turn with our heel around the ankle, right? To make the turn, we have to add in stitches because this piece on the back where the heel is has to get taller and taller and taller until we get enough stitches that it's going to go around the back of our foot. And then once we do that, we're going to work that in the round while we continue to work the front needle, needle one, okay? So we're going to add in stitches on needle two on the sole, but not on needle one. We will work them both at the same time. We'll work needle one and we'll maintain 28 stitches on needle one. We'll work needle two and we will add in stitches. We will add in increases. We're going to add in 2 stitches every other row for a total of adding 20 stitches. So when we end up with this, we're still going to maintain 28 stitches on the front needle, and we will end up with 48 stitches on our back needle. And at that point, we will then start working flat, where we will have to reduce those stitches and create this little pocket, this little cup for the heel. And that's what we're going to do then. And that is what's called turning the heel. And that challenges a lot of people. So that's what we're going to do today, okay? So I have already knit across the front needle of this particular sock. So now I'm going to start I might zoom it in for you. Want me to zoom it in a little bit? We'll see. Do you want to see it a little bit better? Sorry, when I do that, it jostles the camera a lot. So we are going to go ahead and increase to create the gusset, okay? So we're going to start our increase row. So right now we have 28 stitches on both needles. So this is going to start the increase to create our gusset for the heel. That's what we're doing. So I got to get the half of my needle. I'm going to grab it not under the camera, because when I do that, I end up bumping the camera. So here's what we're going to do. On the very first stitch, we are going to knit it like normal through the front. That's one stitch. Now before we complete that stitch and take it off the needle, we are going to go into the back loop of the same stitch. You've seen me demo this before on my channel on making the ruffles. You knit that stitch through the front. Oops, I missed it. Okay, it's a whole visually impaired thing. Wrap that stitch, knit it through the back loop, okay? So we've just knit one stitch through the front and the back loop, and we've made 2 stitches out of 1 stitch, okay? And now we've got 27 stitches left on our back needle. And I am going to go ahead and knit across this back needle. This is needle 2, right? We're calling it needle 2 just for references. I'm going to go ahead and knit across needle 2. I'm going to knit across the next, we had 28 stitches. We're going to knit across the next 26 stitches. And when I get to the almost to the end, like 2 stitches left, so we'll probably knit across 25 stitches. I'm going to get back with you. I'm going to pause the camera though for now, because you don't need to see me watch and see me knit 26 stitches. Okay, be right back.
Pause button. Pause.
Okay, so I am almost to the end of my stitches at needle 2. I've got 2 stitches left. I'm going to knit this stitch right here, and now I've got 1 stitch left on my left hand needle, and I'm going to do the very same thing that I did on the first stitch. I'm going to go into the stitch front to back. I'm going to knit that stitch, and before I take it off of the left hand needle, I'm going to go into the back loop of that same stitch, and I'm going to knit it again. I've just knit that stitch through the front and the back. So I have added 2 stitches to this round, okay? So now there is 30 stitches on that needle. And when I go back to the front of my work, whatever pattern you're doing on the front of your work, I'm going to just maintain that. So whether you're doing stockinette, whether you're doing a knit 2 purl 2 rib, or you're doing broken rib like me, whatever you're doing, keep doing it on your front needle. Don't change that. So I'm going to pause the camera again. I'm going to go ahead and work across my front needle, and then we'll meet at the beginning of the back needle.
Pause.
Okay, I have just completed the front part of my sock on needle 1. So I am on the needle 2 now again. And for the second row of my increases to create my heel gusset, you don't do anything different, okay? You just, let me get the other end of my needle. This is kind of a long circular. I do use different lengths on my circulars in the front and the back. That just helps me to know which needle's my front and my back if I keep a longer one on the back. So I'm not going to do anything. You'll see here at the beginning, your first 2 stitches, they look like they're really close together. That's because those are our 2 stitches out of 1. So I am just going to knit those stitches just like normal, right? Just knit it, nothing fancy, nothing different. Those are the stitches the new stitches that we created. And of course, because we started out with 28, we added 2. We should have 30 stitches on the back on needle 2 on the bottom of our foot. And we are just going to knit across all 30 stitches just like normal. Nothing fancy, nothing different. Knit every single stitch, all 30 stitches, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to knit across this needle. I will pause the camera, I will knit across this needle, and then I'm going to flip the project around, and I'm going to go to the front needle on my ribbing, and I'm going to work across the front again, okay? So I'm going to finish needle 2 on the bottom, going to flip it around, go to the top side of the sock, knit across the ribbing on the sock, and then I'll turn the camera back on once we get to the bottom, the sole of our sock again, because that's the only thing that I'm really teaching you right now is just how to create your heel on a sock, right? That's what we're doing right now. We're not worrying about the front of the sock. We're not worrying about the top of the sock. We're worried about how to create a heel, which is all done on the back side on needle 2 if you're working on 2 circs. If you're working on 4 double points, then those would usually in a pattern, if it's written for 4 double pointed needles, that would be called needles 3 and 4 usually, okay? But I think that's super confusing for learning. I'm like, knitting a heel is confusing enough. Okay, so I don't think anybody needs to learn, on my opinion, on 4 double points. But of course, people did work on double pointed needles, 4 double points to do socks for a long time. So, okay, I think I'm almost to the end. I'll just work these last few stitches with you till we get to this end stitch so you can see what we're doing here at the end. Right, here's the end stitch where we made 2 stitches out of 1, right? Out of the 1 stitch from the row below, we got 2 stitches. So we are just going to knit those as normal. Nothing fancy, nothing different, okay? Then I'm going to turn my project around, and I'm just going to go ahead and work across needle 1 again. Pause the camera, and I'll see you in a second.
Pause.
Okay, so I have just finished knitting across needle 1, right? The top side, the front side of my sock. And I'm now going to start working on the back again, on the bottom. And so this round, I'm going to do the exact same thing as I did, not the last round, but the previous round, where I keep adding in stitches, right? Now I have 28 on the front, 30 on the back. So on this round, I'm going to go into the very first stitch. I'm going to go into the stitch front to back. I'm going to wrap the stitch. I'm going to knit it through the front. Before I take it off the left hand needle, I'm going to go in to the back of the stitch. I'm going to wrap it again with the yarn over. I'm going to knit that stitch through the back loop. One stitch becomes two stitches on the right hand needle. Take that off the left hand needle. That stitch has been worked. Pull that nice and tight so there's no gap. Those stitches aren't loose. And now I'm going to knit all the way across the back needle, across needle 2. Okay, so I'm going to knit across needle 2 till we get just about to the end, and then I will get back with you. All right? Okay.
Pause.
Okay, so here we are. We're at the end of needle 2. We got 2 stitches left. I'm going to knit this stitch, and then we're going to get to the very last stitch on the needle. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to knit it through the front loop, and then before we take it off the needle, we're going to stick the right hand needle through the back loop of that stitch on the left hand needle. We're going to knit it in the back loop. One stitch becomes 2, okay? So across the back needle now, we should have 32 stitches. You should already be able to tell it's getting a little bit wider, right, than the front. So the front still has 28 stitches. The back has 32 because we're going to make this go up around the back of our foot, right? We're here, we get to where the ankle and the foot meet, and we have to add more fabric so that it can go up around the ankle, okay? So I now have 32 stitches on the back needle, 28 on the front. I want to have 48 stitches. By the time I get done working on my increases, I want to have 48 stitches on the back needle, 28 on the front. That means I want to go from 28 on the back to 48. That means I want to increase the back needle, needle 2, by 20 stitches because we increase 2 stitches every time we do an increase round. That means we're going to do 10 increase rounds, right? But we alternate it with a round where we maintain the stitch count. So that means in total, you're going to do 20 rounds, increasing 20 stitches by increasing 2 stitches every other round on the back needle, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I am not going to continue to film this, the increases, okay? I think you've probably got it by now. If you don't, please feel free to rewind, go back, slow it down, whatever you need to do to understand how to work those increases. But I'm going to work the increases till I have 48 on needle 2 on the back and maintain 28 on the front in pattern. Okay, so now that I've worked all of my increases on my sock, right, on my back needle, on needle 2, I should now have 48 stitches along the back needle. That is the gusset. We've increased our gusset to go up around the top, the back of our ankle. And on needle 1, you should have whatever you're doing. When you're increasing your stitches on the back for the ankle, you don't want to change anything about needle 1. You want to maintain your stitch count on needle 1, and you want to maintain your pattern on needle 1. And so that's what I did. I've maintained my pattern. I still have 28 stitches on my front needle, on needle 1. Now we're done with needle 1 for a little bit. So I went ahead and put these little end caps on my needles just to make sure that we don't lose those stitches while we're playing around with needle 2. So what we've done here is this is the first sock, right? We've started this angle where my increases are. You'll be able to feel it. This is what we've done. We've started this, we've increased, we've made this triangle for our ankle. These are 20 stitches that we've increased. We've increased the ankle, the back needle by 20 stitches over 20 rounds, 2 stitches every other round. So each side has a 10 stitch increase, right? There's 10 stitches increased on this side, 10 stitches on the other side. So now what we have to do is we don't want to keep those 20 extra stitches. We want to return our sock before we join it in the round to continue to go up around our ankle. We have to return the back needle to having 28 stitches, which means we have to work some decreases in so that we decrease 28 stitches. So what we're going to do now is creating this little, what we're going to do is turn the heel. This is what's called turning the heel. And we are going to create this little pocket on the back for our heel. Right here on this sock, there it is. There's where it starts, right? This is where it starts. This cup is like a little cup or like a little pocket, and it's going to cup the back of our heel. This is where we're at. This is where we start. This is where we're going to start right now. And then we're going to decrease our stitches and turn our heel. So this is a line of decreases. This is a line of slip slip knits. This is a line of purl 2 together. That's what we're going to do. So instead of working excuse me, instead of working in the round, we're going to work flat for a little bit. So I have finished the round on needle 1, put the end caps on, and now we're going to start working flat on needle 2 over our 48 stitches. We are going to turn our heel. Because I have 48 stitches, I am going to knit 27 stitches on needle 2. I'll do a few of them with you, and then we will put our camera on pause. You don't need to watch me make 28 stitches, okay? But I will start it with you for just a little bit. We'll do 1 together, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm going to pause the camera until I get to 27.
Pause button. Pause.
Okay, so I have knit 27 of my 48 stitches. And now we are going to do, this is where we start our decreases. So we're going to slip 1, slip 2, right? And then we're going to stick our left hand needle back into those slip stitches. We're going to wrap that, and we are going to do, this is called a slip slip knit, right? And this is a decrease. We've done a slip slip knit. That's a decrease. We've slipped 2 stitches together, and then we're going to knit 1. And that's what we're going to do. And now we turn our work. This is turning the heel. So now we're going to work in rows as opposed to in rounds. So now we've turned our work. We slip that first stitch, the last one we knit, and now we're going to purl 7. So we're going to purl 1. We're going to purl 2. Oh my goodness. I'm going to purl 2. I'm going to purl 3. Find my yarn back. 4. Trying to pull these nice and tight. 5. 6, and 7. So we've slipped 1, we've purled 7, and now comes another decrease, because that's what we're doing now, is taking out these 20 stitches that we added. So here is where we need to purl 2 together, and yes, I do struggle with purl 2 together. It's tricky for me. Hope I can do it on camera. Okay, I got 2 stitches. We got 2 stitches on the needle. We're going to wrap that and pull our needle through, pull our new stitch through, and we should have both stitches purled together, right? Purl 2 together, and those can come off the needle. So we've now purled 2 together, and now we want to purl 1 more. Purl 1 more, and then turn our work. So we're working in rows. And now we slip the first stitch, right? The last one that we just did, and we're going to knit 8. So now we knit 1, knit 2, excuse me, sorry. We knit 3, we knit 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now we repeat the same thing here, and you'll know because you'll get to a gap. Do you see there's a gap? If you're sighted, there's going to be a gap between these stitches. This is where you turned your work. So we're going to do another slip, slip, knit because we're decreasing. We're taking out those 20 stitches. So we slip the first stitch onto the right needle. We slip the second stitch onto the right needle. Then we stick the left needle back into the front legs of that stitch. We do our yarn over it. We wrap those 2 together, and then we stitch them together. We just did a slip, slip, knit. We've decreased by 1 more stitch. We're going to knit 1 more on the end, and then we turn our work. Still working in rows, still decreasing. Okay, I'm going to do 1 more row with you, maybe 2. We're going to slip the next stitch, and then I try to pull these purl stitches nice and tight. So it's a little bit slow. We're going to purl 1. We're going to purl, get my needle in there, 2. We're going to purl 9 stitches. 3. Oh my gosh. I've already lost track of what I'm doing. Okay. I've slipped 1. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm really bad at purling at this angle. 5. 6. 7. 8. And 9. And you'll know when you're at your place for your decrease, right? Either your slip, slip, knit, or your purl 2 together, because there will be the gap in between those stitches, and we want to eliminate that gap, and we do that by working in that decrease. So we got to get our right needle into the front legs of both of those 2 stitches together. We're going to wrap that stitch and purl 2 together. Purl 2 together. That's a decrease. We're going to purl 1 more stitch, and then we're going to turn our work. I'll do 1 more row with you on the knit side, and then we're just going to keep repeating this, okay? So I'll do one more. We're going to slip the first stitch, and now we're going to knit 10 stitches, and then till we get to our gap, right? That's the thing. You work till you get to your gap so you can feel it. One. So if you lose track, work to your gap. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And I can already feel that gap between the stitches on the needle. So now's our gap, and now it's time to work a decrease, and you're going to do a slip, slip, knit. So you stick the tip of your right hand needle into the front loop of that stitch. There's your gap. You stick the tip of your right hand needle into the next stitch. Both stitches are now on the right hand needle unworked. So tip of the left hand needle goes into the front loops of both of those stitches. You do your yarn over, you wrap those two stitches together, and then you pull your needle back out with the new yarn on it, and that's your slip, slip, knit. And then you knit one more, and you'll turn your work, and you'll purl 11. Okay, now I'm not going to do any more with you. I think you get the pattern. If not, feel free to rewind and go back over and over. But basically you start increasing by one stitch. You can already see the decrease line of what's happening here on the heel. So I started with, so here's my little gap, right? So I'm going to basically slip the first stitch. I'm going to purl 11. I'm going to get to my gap. I'm going to purl 2 together, purl 1, and turn my work. So you keep adding in one stitch. It's not too hard. Once you get the hang of it, it's not too hard to remember. I started with 7 for my feet. If you're working with more, you know, you might have to adjust a little bit of how many stitches you work in the beginning. I did 27, but you're going to just continue this pattern of adding in one more worked stitch until you get back. So adding in one more stitch that you work, and then working your decrease, and then flipping it and working your decrease. Your purl 2 together, your slip, slip, knit, until you've decreased by 20 stitches, and until you end up with 28 stitches back on the heel needle to the back needle. Okay, so I'm going to pause the camera. I'm going to continue turning my heel. Okay.
Pause.
Okay, and here it is. Here is my heel. I continued that pattern, right? Where I did my purling, increasing and increasing the number of stitches that I worked, while I did a decrease at each row. So I am now back. This is what the heel cup should look like. This is what your turned heel should look like. You should see your little edges of your decrease stitches on each row. You should have your slip, slip, knits and your purl 2 together on each side, and you should be back to the number of stitches that you worked on originally, and the same number of stitches that you have on the front needle. So now I ended on a purl row, right? The last one that I worked on the purl side was a purl 2 together and purl 1. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go ahead and knit this in a row one more time before I join it in the round, because when I join in the round, I want to turn it over and start on needle 1, and I'm not there. I'm at the other end. So I'm going to go ahead and knit these 28 stitches on needle 2, right? I'll start that with you. So this was the last stitch. This was this stitch over here with my purl 2 together and my purl 1. If you think this last stitch that you just purled is going to be loose at all, you could knit it through the back loop. I'm not going to. I think it's going to be okay. The bigger issue will be when we go to join in the round, and that's where people do have issues with gaps, and it doesn't matter whether you're doing short rows or whether you're doing this method where you create the gusset and then do your decreases. Heel gap is common, so I'm going to finish this row, and then I'll get back with you. I'm going to pause the camera. I'll get back with you. We will join in the round and talk about heel gap. Okay.
Pause.
Okay, so now I'm back to where I can join with needle 1, and this is the tricky part. This is where people sometimes get this little gap in here. There's a couple of things you can do to try to lessen heel gap, and one is you can knit this very first stitch through the back loop. That will tighten it up. The other thing that you could do is you can take your needle and you could grab this little loop from the row below on the last stitch of the back needle. You could lift that up, put that on to the needle 1 and knit that together, do a knit 2 together with that first stitch. I'm going to not do that and try to just knit this stitch through the back loop and then pull it really, really tight is what I'm going to try to do. And we'll see what happens, right? I might end up regretting that and have a bigger heel gap than I want. But I'm just going to try to knit this through the back loop and then pull it really, really tight up against, make sure this needle's back where I want it. So we take out any slack that's there and pull that really tight up against that needle. So that's one stitch. I got to maintain my pattern here. 2. Pull the second stitch really tight too. So you take out any slack. Those first 2 stitches, you want to pull them really tight so that you take out any slack that might be in that gap. I'm going to move my yarn to the front here because I'm going to maintain my pattern that I was doing, which is this broken rib. So I got a purl in here. Okay, so I'm going to continue working across in my pattern across the front, sorry, I bumped my camera, across the front needle, and I'll get back to you at the end of this row where we join one more time with the back needle, and that will complete our video on sock heels.
Pause.
Okay, so I have finished working across needle 1 and now I'm getting ready to join in the round again. And again, you can work this first stitch through the back loop. You can grab this little leg down here and work it with a knit 2 together. I'm just going to knit this one through the back loop and just pull those first 2 stitches that I knit super, super tight to pull up any slack. Oops, I just completely missed the stitch. Into the back loop. Okay, got that one worked through the back loop. I'm going to pull it really tight, and then I'm going to pull my second stitch really tight as well. And then you just keep working on your back needle all the way across to the end of the round, and you will now be working in, as soon as you complete this round, you will now be working your sock in the round again, just like you were before you started your heel, right? Before you started your heel turn. So I will usually do a couple more rounds where I pattern across, the front needle, and I might do a couple of rounds of stockinette on the back needle just to get past the heel a little bit. And then whatever pattern you're doing, right, whether it's rib like what I'm doing, or whether you're doing cables, or I don't know, whatever kind of thing, lace, whatever. There's all kinds of things that you could be doing with your front needle, right, with needle 1, that your pattern is on your sock. Whatever that is, I usually give it a couple of rounds and stockinette on the back needle, and then I go ahead and start that. So that's what I'm going to choose to do. Of course, you can do whatever you want, right? I'm just telling you what I do. So I'm going to try to work to the end of this round with you, just so you can see what it looks like. But at the end of this, you will have learned how to getting a text message about something. I got my screen reader turned down way low. Don't have my earbud in. But that's okay. To work to the end, maybe I should have put the camera on pause so you don't have to watch me knit this entire row. Sorry about that. But at the end of this round, you will have completed your heel increases, your gusset, and your heel turn. And I got to get this last stitch in there. It can be a little bit tight as we join. We're going to knit that. Okay. Here we go. Our sock is now joined in the round. We'll take a look at our heel gap. Let's see. Now, I don't think we got a little bit of a heel gap in there. Just a little bit. I think that'll tighten up as we work. Let's take a look at the other side. I think that's gonna. Well, that one might have that's a little bit too big of a hole there. So what I might do to fix that on my next round, not super. Well, let me pull these apart. Yeah, that's a little bit gappier than I want for my heel gap there. So probably what I'll do on my next round is grab this little leg right here on this stitch from the row below, put it onto my needle, knit those two together. You could even knit them together through the back loop if you wanted, and really pull that tight, because that's a little bit too big of a hole in my opinion. But the other one turned out great. Don't know why I had issues with one and not the other. So that completes your tutorial, your little lesson on how to work a heel from the toe up, right? This is for a toe up sock. We made our gusset, we worked our increases, then we took all those stitches out. So with slip knits and purl two together, no short rows, no flap, no pick up and knit, right? That's what I want to avoid. I want to avoid short rows and heels, and I want to avoid pick up and knit, especially with the fingering weight yarn, because as somebody who's visually impaired who knits by feel, it's really hard for me to feel those individual stitches in fingering weight yarn. Okay, well, I hope that this was helpful for somebody out there who's struggling with heels, right? Who's struggling to learn how do I do heels for my socks, because that's the tripper. That's why most people give up on knitting socks. Okay, well, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, happy stitching and happy sock week. All right, bye-bye for now.
Pause button. Stop.